Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about the idea of evolution and what evolution is. And one thing to remember as we start is we're going to be talking about evolution as a theory. It's called actually the theory of evolution. And if you remember that a theory is something that has lots of data behind it that's saying it's correct, but it's not something we can ever 100% prove. Okay? Now, evolution is the same way. There's lots of data behind it, and we'll talk about that data in another video. But over time, if we get new data, the theory of evolution will slightly change. Okay, so a theory is something that there's lots of data, and when new data comes about, it can slightly change. Okay, so what is evolution? Evolution is the idea that organisms change over time. And what we're talking about here, guys, is it's all about their genetics. The gene frequency of a population or of organisms will change over time. That's what we're talking about here, the change in a gene frequency. And I realize that we're not talking about one individual, we're talking about an entire species changing over time. And when I keep saying the word time, we're talking about millions of years. Sometimes it's hard for humans to grasp evolution because of the amount of time it takes for it to take place. It's not 1 or 2 generations of humans, it's millions of years. So it's something that's really hard for us to understand when it comes to that. Now, the driving force behind evolution is natural selection. Natural selection is the idea that, or is sometimes called survival of the fittest, right? And when we say fittest, we don't mean the best looking, right? Fitness is those that are best adapted to survive. And that's what natural selection is. It's those organisms that are best adapted to their environment so that they can survive, reproduce, and pass on their traits. A lot of kids forget this part of it. In order for natural selection or survival of the fittest to occur, you need to be able to reproduce and pass on those traits that helped you survive. So we have these 5 different data points that tell us that evolution took place, which we're going to cover in a different video. But right now, what I think is hard for kids to understand with evolution is that it all started with one organism about 3.5 billion years ago. And during this time, Earth was a very different place. Earth did not have any land masses, there was no plants. It was made primarily of water, and that water was extremely hot and extremely toxic. Okay? And the very first organism we call the Luca, which is the last universal common ancestor. And look how simple it is. It just has this lipid membrane and has some RNA in the middle of it, and that's about it. But scientists hypothesize that this was the very first organism, and that all organisms came from this. So if we take a look here at an evolutionary tree, which is showing just some of the organisms on Earth, the Luca would be all the way down here. It would be the original organism about 3.5 billion years ago on Earth. And that all living things, as we're going to see here, started out very simple and then get extremely complex as we move up, evolved from that original one. Okay? So key things behind evolution. It's a theory that changes over time when new data comes about. There's lots of data behind it. So it is a concept that has lots of data showing that it is correct. It is a change in a species over time, which is a change in their gene frequency. The time is millions of years. It is driven by something called natural selection. Sometimes think of it like survival of the fittest. And that's those organisms that are best adapted to their environment that can survive and pass on their traits. All right, so those are the key general ideas behind evolution.